got the action for you right here. Let's get underway. That's right, folks. It's going to be Twitch chat. You folks there on my left apparently have embodied yourself into Age of Empires 4 and are playing as China up against Yo Board in the Abbasid Dynasties. And folks, the reason this one is so entertaining to me and why I wanted to do it wasn't just because it's going to be quite a long game. The more important part here is Twitch chat is Xiao. So Xiao is facing off against his own bald head. His own buffered, wax, shiny head. So it kind of seems fitting, right? A bald person with their head's that shiny, they can see the reflection in it, and he's going to see his reflection in this. Not so much in the Civ choice. I feel like I haven't actually seen Xiao play any Abbasid Dynasty. I've seen him play a lot of Mongols, China, Rus, I'd say were the primary ones. Maybe some French in the early days. Those are usually the Civs that he plays. So, I don't know. Bad Xiao bald head. You're already not role-playing correctly. Whereas Xiao is going to be. And both of them having these eco-boomy type civs on Hill and Dale. So should be hard to get early aggression in. I think in these type of matchups, it's quite interesting to watch from an economical macro scale. Just because we can talk about how aggressive X faction is and how great they are at harassing early. Or how amazing they are at like securing the carcasses. But the cool thing is because you have such a condensed area that should be easily protected, the whole element around pro scouts, although it's still important, can matter less because you actually have a lot more breathing space to transition to multiple TCs and into farmlands. I do think that Xiaobu definitely got somewhat conned on this one, though, by the way. You might notice that one player here only has to wall up 2 areas. The other one has to do 3. When will they do away with these crappy spawns? I wish there was just like some checks in place. If this happens here, it should happen on the other side with one of the 3 entrances. It's just kind of absurd. Of course, I guess the counteraction argument is at least his wood line could be potentially exposed, right? If there's a little bit of vision gameplay around here, you could snipe into him and he could accidentally reveal himself too early. Depends how Xiao goes, but he's not going to worry about that for at least the first 20 minutes, right? You can see he's going on the right wood line. I do think, in reference to what we're saying about pro scouts, Abbasids are definitely behind in this matchup. And once again, I do think pro scouts is too strong right now. I do think there's going to have to be a nerf. I genuinely think that nerf should just be bringing it in line with exactly how it functions in campaign and seeing how that feels in the meta. And for anyone who hasn't played for the campaign, shame on you. Amazing experience that Relic and World's Edge actually crafted here. You should go check it out. But in the campaign, if you pick up a carcass with a scout, you move slower. That's the way it's balanced, right? Now, don't get me wrong. They shouldn't just copy and paste the code across from that because, funnily enough, in the campaign, you can also pick up boar carcasses, which would be broken. But from the deer perspective, moving that much slower would at least make the investment into pro scouts a risk, and also the way you balance picking up carcasses and moving around also risky, right? Because it means that you could actually get these very interesting pro scout and pro scout matchups where one person picks up the carcasses and the other one exploits that to snipe them down, right? So then you have to think about when you drag them away. And then at least if we're talking about pro scout and pro scout, it becomes a more interesting micro-intensive experience as opposed to right now where it's simply a macro measurement of how quickly you scale in the scout count. And if you're talking about that element, it's almost impossible for half of the civs in the game right now to compete with the best. And the best being China, Mongols, and Rus, who all have a quick way of building a scout army. And then, yeah, tier 2 to me is always France and HRE. HRE because they have surplus resources to afford it a bit quicker, and France because their tech up building allows them to build scouts 20% faster. So, Xiao, understanding the importance of openers, is already moving in to scout out what his opponent is up to. We'll see the Abbasid player has quite a lot of people working on wood, and 0 on the gold, because he's already got his tech up underway. So this does suggest that we could be seeing archers. It could also just be that Xiaoboard is trying to cover himself like this, and he could also be thinking about TC expansion, which is the most likely play that you're probably anticipating if you're Xiao in this situation, up against Board. Just because Abbasids, right, when they've got this many people in wood, I don't feel like it's frequently they're playing into archers. The times that we see Abbasid players playing into an early archer rush is when they're trying to counter out an opponent's archer rush, such as England, or they're worried about a spearman spam out of a Mongol player. In the meantime, interesting opening from Xiao to go for the bargain stun. I don't necessarily feel this is needed here, but he's not willing to gamble on what his opponent's doing, right? Like, we have God Vision, Whereas Xiao here couldn't get in with his scout to see that the Abysses were mining stone. So he's going to play a bit safe here and go for the Balkan Sun, as opposed to the Imperial Academy that would be absolutely amazing on this map generation in this setup. I think they are nattering in the background. By the way, if by any chance a Age of Empires dev does happen upon this video, can we actually get the chat in observer mode, please? In before there's an option in the options that I missed, right, to toggle that on. But I'm pretty sure there isn't. At least I never noticed it. Maybe I'm just blind, but I'm pretty sure we don't have an option for that right now. And it can be a bit frustrating. I like the banter sometimes. I want to see it. So 2 Imperial officials out already. Of course, this is going to ramp up the rate at which you gather food and the wood. And now the wood line is shifting across. So he's on the stone, right? Yes. I like this. So you see the surplus that he has. Xiao has ample amounts of wood, courtesy of the production rate via the extra 20% drop-off with the Imperial Official. So what he's now trying to do is he's trying to TC boom, and he's actually going to be more comfortable as the game goes on. Because not only can you match Abyss's TC boom rate, but you will then be able to scale even quicker if you go for Song Dynasty, right? With that 30% reduced production time of villages. And the way that the Abysses try to compete with this, by the way, is that they can get fresh foodstuffs, which he already got. Which means that it's actually easier for a Abyssal player more quickly to sustain 2 and 3 TCs. Because the output, the input rather, of terms of food costs is cheaper for them by 50%. That advantage, by the way, does tend to dissipate into nothingness when you're up against China, though. Just because if you have, say, 10 people working on food, and you're talking about that extra drop-off of an extra 20%, like, yeah, you can already see how that works out. Instead of getting 100 food on the drop-offs, you're getting 120. And that scales, of course, quite nicely. And also keep in mind that he's playing into the pro scouts like we talked about, which means he'll be able to gather these. Actually, he's not. Not yet, anyway. So he's got the scouts out, but he hasn't researched into the pro scouts. I think he was he missing the research? Yeah, I think he was. Oh, no, he was. Xiao didn't save quite enough wood when he moved across onto the stone. You can see the numbers right now. So he's churning out scouts, but he can't actually afford hunting. Professional scouts, rather. So he's not able to pick up these carcasses yet. And this would be an opportunity for another player to exploit, but luckily for him, it is an opposite player. So I don't expect Bald to try and pick these carcasses up at any stage in this game. So yeah, I guess you could say Xiao definitely dodged a bullet in that one. And he will move everyone back across the wood line. Reason being, he wants to give himself a situation where he potentially either looks at a rush into castle or goes for a third TC. I wouldn't mind seeing 3 TCs here. It can feel a little bit greedy on this high ground area. But I think, to me, China is one of those rare examples of a Civ that I don't mind seeing 3 TCs on the high ground of Hill and Dale. I think because of the way they scale into like farming economy and the way they do it, you can be more comfortable with the way you scale. I think like you can actually afford 3 TCs on a condensed area where other civs like England, France, you know, even to an extent the Abbasids struggle with that. So vision game so far, Bald really not actually having much of a gander on what his opponent is doing. He will see multi-scouts now, so he'll assume that the stable's already been dropped. And now the carcasses are being picked up. But awkwardly delayed, right? You can see that he was starting to run out of sheep. Had 1 or 2 people on berry bushes as a result of it as well. So he's being a little bit inefficient here. But still scaling quite well, right? I think they're pretty competitive on these numbers at the moment. Bald is still going. So yeah, he's going for that third TC. And I like that play. And he's onto the berry bushes. Remember, the berry bushes are quite competitive for the Abysses and Delhi to go onto. Not only do you upgrade them from 250 to 500 with the mill, but you also gather 25% quicker than any other Civ from berry bushes. And he also has this nice spawn, right? Berry bush plus the deer. So a nice opening overall. Oh, there we go. Deer moving across. So now Xiao can start to ramp up that production rate. Has walled himself in, so no entrance on either side. Interesting play by Bald. Bald is dropping very early stone walls here. So he's paranoid about early pressure because remember, China does have a power spike timing around the Zhugnu if they choose. What he doesn't know is so far actually Xiao hasn't even opted to get the Song Dynasty. But he is worried about what comes in the next 5 minutes. Because keep in mind, one amazing thing you can do as the Chinese against these palisade defenses very early on is if you rush up into castle and then you go across for the Yuan Dynasty, you get access to the Fire Lancers. And Fire Lancers are basically like a mobile ram and will burn through buildings very quickly. So, more Villies coming out. Count right now is even, as it should stay. And no signs of Xiu going in for the Song Dynasty. Instead, he's going to... There it is, finally. I was kind of surprised about the delay on this, but he does opt for it in the end. His food was suffering a little bit. Because remember, once you got multi-TCs, it's harder for you to actually like sustain the food eco side of things. But this will now allow him to scale phenomenally well. And it means that if Bald wants to stay competitive, yeah, there it is, third TC. And this is a bit greedy in this space, but when you're playing as the Abbasids on this type of landscape against this type of opponent, you're worried that they're going to get aggressive early. So you can't go for an aggressive TC into the center of the map, right? You have to play defensive like this. And he's already shown his hand that he's going to do that with this Stonewall drop. Slow building the Imperial Academy, only 3 people on it. I'm wondering what the target is in the next 5-10 minutes. Because one thing to highlight here is that there's no real shows of aggression so far. But that's about to switch up. Bald has dropped 3 archery ranges and is now building the racks. Interesting that he might be the one to get aggressive first. I do think there's something we haven't seen utilized enough by Abbasid players yet is exactly this, by the way. In the late game, at least. The composite bows does give this amazing bounce back point in the game. When hand cannoneers seem a little bit too pricey to be cost efficient, archers are actually a surprisingly good counter-argument, right? Like a negotiated point because of that reduced reload time with the composite bows. So it'd be cool if we get to a stage in the game where we see that being utilized, because I don't think I've actually seen that really come heavily into play. Because usually when Abbasid players get into Imperial Age status, often what I've seen out of them is just spearman spams more than anything else, right? With the phalanx, with the kind of zerging in and then supporting with a siege army. It feels like archers always get overlooked. Wow, Aston Clock Tower going down, so straight up in that castle age, not too delayed, really, considering he went back for the Song Dynasty, which gave him better scaling. And in fact, when we look at the count now, Bald is ahead for the moment, courtesy of that third TC. It's going to be curious to see whether Xiu feels comfortable with just 2 TCs or if he goes for a third himself. Because he doesn't know about this, right? This is all hidden info. And this is where the most important detail when we go into that mid-game, right? When the players emerge from their base, like someone who's been living in a basement for 20 years and hasn't seen sun. It's going to be who decided to bring not only sunscreen, but a pretty hat as well and sunglasses, right? And what I mean by that is it's going to be who actually brought a composite force out. Because if you don't know what you're playing against and you're playing blind, the worst thing you can do is double down on one unit type. And this is going to be the open up Palace Guard. The question is whether his opponent's going to read this. Yeah, this is the worst read for an Abbasid player. Man armor spam against Palace Guard is bad. Reason being is that Palace Guard are rapid raiding forces, right? With the 1.38 movement per second compared to the 1.12, you're actually able to just kite, move away, and engage on your terms. And I know I said about composite force, and it looks like we're going to get exactly that, as he does have the archer line as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see Palace Guard and Zhuge Nu. Zhuge Nu, just in case your opponent goes into crossbows, and then Palace Guard for everything else. And then you have a small group of siege weapons, right? Usually the Nesta Bees. And then basically you'll run across your opponent's base, you'll build a few rams, and you'll try and knock the doors down and get inside. And it's so nice having the Chinese like background track, right? Just we're vibing, we're really calm, we're chill. We're also broken, by the way. So that's a new one for you folks. It used to be up there. Ah, there we go. There's just a hamster in like the director's seat in a small room somewhere in the Age of Empires servers, just chilling, watching like the accidentally released footage of the new Matrix movie, just vibing, and then he looks across and goes, oh crap, I forgot to update that. And then you just quickly see him switch it across. It's like, yeah, Song Dynasty, Song Dynasty. No Tang Dynasty. Stupid hamster. And when the servers crash, that's when the hamster accidentally spills his Kool-Aid all over the CPUs. Hamster tech, folks, don't underrate it. Don't underrate the power of vision. And this is the important part. One of these people are playing blind. The other one, although he's blind to what's happening inside the base, he's keeping an eyeball on what's going to occur the moment his opponent breaks out, right? He's got all these areas covered. And this is going to give a big tip-off to Xiao about how uncomfortable Bald likely is. He's walling still. So if you're Xiao, you feel like you're stronger, right? Your opponent's showing signs of weakness. However, your opponent is covering himself into the military wing now, going for the Imperial Age. And Xiao, I don't think he's ready for this, right? No, he slowed down. And you can't even excuse it as, oh, he was going into the farms, right? Because his opponent was also doing that. But the problem here is the TC difference, right? It's 86 to 89. But I do feel like this has been more efficiently played by his opponent. It could be even better if agriculture had been taken by Bald, but this is still big credit to him. The difference is this, right? It's this force right here. Despite the fact that Bald has built a few troops, it's like double the amount of resources that's been invested by Xiao. And he's about to get the bad news in a sec. And just a wonky Sitch to not be trying to breach at this stage. But there's a reason behind it. Like we had highlighted before, and I think this is Xiao's like thought process. He doesn't want to reveal what he's doing. Because if he runs out of the base now and this straggler scout sees him, then there's potentially enough time that your opponent builds up a counterforce in his base, right? Because remember, although the Palace Guard do move quick, yes, the Nesta Bees and the Crossbowmen don't, both moving their respective 1.12 per second. And now scaling continues. Second tier unlocked, now that 15% increased gather rate on everything, and Imperial Age is going to be struck. And this is where Xiao has to be feeling a bit uncomfortable. He's not ready for a tech up himself. You can see he's only halfway there. The only good thing he's got going for him right now is he knows his opponent hasn't done anything because he's got the scouts in position. But this move coming out from Bald, 20 villages out to the center here to drop a keep. And remember, Xiao sees this, so Xiao could react with a small force if he wants to. The alternative is letting your opponent get control over a sacred site. And I don't think the Wolves are going to beat out the villager count here. So looks like that's going down for free. In fairness, I'm not even sure if he would have been able to move quick enough to counter this. But this is just a reaction of you not moving out your base at all, right? And now the Wolves going down. I think that maybe just about covers it. I hope it does. That would be an awkward moment later on. But yeah, this is how uncomfortable Xiao is. Because he's vulnerable right now, because he needs to tech up himself, he needs to protect himself with walls in case his opponent runs across. And because he saw these villages moving out, his concern is not only the keep control around the sacred site, it's also the potential for a fort base in the center of the map out the opposite player. Well, he's going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable at this rate, because this wood line is almost gone, and then he's going to have to get through the center of one. I do feel like Xiao, in the next 6-7 minutes, is going to have to contemplate moving off the top here, because he's going to run out of resources quickly. He has got plenty of gold. Stone's becoming a limiting factor, I think. More importantly, I think the wood lines are the ones that will convince him he needs to push out, and that's why he's moving. Decently sizable force here. Problem he has now is because he wasn't quicker to do this, Bald has enough room to protect all these villages, right, with the outpost and the keep. And it's actually vet archers coming out, so the opening trade here is going to actually favor Xiao. His opponent doesn't have a good composition against what Xiao has brought, which is going to be Palace Guard plus the Crossbowman. And Nesta Bees, signal fight's about to occur. No move away yet by Bald. Bald, big mistake here. Oh, backs off just in time. I'm glad he caught that. Wouldn't really have had much of an excuse not to catch that, considering nothing else on the map is happening right now. Now Nesta Bees in, spots out the archers, and now you're confident. Because you saw what was pushing out already. You see it's only archers so far. Your scouts are unscouted, so you're not losing that vision game. And now you should be able to push in and take out this keep. However, it looks like the boiled oil is going to be complete in time. So it might be a bit more difficult than you'd like. And the importance of this move cannot be underrated. Right now, Bald was exploiting the map, and he was getting away with it for free. He wasn't being forced to show his hand, show his military tool. He forced Show to show his hand, but now he gets the bad news that he's outmatched, right? He needs a new unit type. And right now, he's not considering it. He's going into what we're talking about, right? The composite bows. So it's going to be cool to see this, but I just don't know if this is the matchup for it. I do like it against the crossbowman, but I don't feel like you've answered the Palace Guard still. And that could be a little bit scary. And speaking of those Palace Guard, here they come. Zoom, zoom. This chase is going to be quick. You're going to lose so many villagers here. There's nowhere for them to hide. And this is the power of Palace Guard, folks. Palace Guard are the Chinese's raiding force. Screw horsemen, screw lancers, none of that matters. Cost effective, moves fast, and when it gets in range, it gets the charge bonus putting up to about 1.5 tiles per second. And that's before you even consider the Ming Dynasty, which Show should sure as hell be going for soon. It's actually double value at this stage of the game, right? Like, everyone thinks it's about fire lancers, and it really isn't. It's actually more about granaries for this additional income that he's going to get, which is going to be glorious, right, with this much farmlands. And the other really important detail to highlight here is actually the movement speed boost of 15%. Because then, when you actually get into charge range, you're actually faster than cavalry as Palace Guards. It's insane. And look at the Mangonel spam now coming out from board. But this scout should see all this. So, Show has a little bit of time to react. He's going to need to as well. He needs to start combating what Bald is doing because he's allowing these keeps to go down, which even when you snipe out a few villages, is slowly but surely giving Bald control of these huge deposits in the center. Which if this game draws out to a slog, a late game slog, an hour-long type game, these are going to be the difference. And if you let your opponent have them early, it could come back to bite you in the ass. Bald at this stage just wants to fight, right? He's actually pop-capped at this stage. They both have similar economies, so they can actually quickly replace. But the problem for Show is he hasn't capped out his military yet. And it might be that he's thinking, oh, he's doing bombards. I thought maybe a few springles would be the good idea here. Because remember, your springles are better than your opponent's, right? 50% more health on any unit you're building out of this clock tower. And yeah, I think this is the deal for him. This is why he's doing it. It's not just bombards that are amazing at the stage for Siege for the Keeps. It's the fact that he can get all these unique techs, right? The pyrotechnics and the reload drills means that he can actually snipe from very far away with 20% additional range and the quicker reload time. I'm excited for this, actually. I think this game isn't going to go fast. I think they're showing a lot of respect to each other. And the reason I'm excited isn't because, oh my god, long game where people not do stuff. It's the way that they're slowly expanding their influence, right? Different areas of the map. And also, I think this is going to allow us to get to a stage where we're really going to see the power of late-stage gunpowder, right, from the Chinese. We might even eventually see him switch over into hand cannoneers, right, because they're gunpowder units as well, so they get affected by this unique tech. But overall, it means that when you get to late-game sieging, I think China has a distinct advantage that we don't often see, because it feels like a lot of Chinese games are over halfway through the castle or at the immediate beginning of the Imperial. I guess it'll give us someone else to cry about, right? Everyone's just always worried at the moment about, oh, you know, the power of the fire lancers, they're broken, it's stupid. Well, let's see if we can give something new to read about with the bombards. More decaps on the left. A few Palace Guard moving out. Ooh, they might just about contest this, actually. Movement in, needs to get on it. And he's just in range of it, so he'll stop the decap. That keeps the gold treacle going his way. Meanwhile, Bombard, about to be sniped out by the Springles. It's not fast, though, right? And this should buy enough time to back away, see? And that's the power of the Chinese, right? A normal Bombard would be maybe 1 health or dead. This one, tanks enough that it can just be repaired and then go back to work. And there's no villagers here, right? Because you actually made him vacate this area with his eco count. So you're going to forfeit a keep away, and you don't like this. It's 800 stone that's just wasted. Meanwhile, Palace Guard wrapping around the back under the villager lines. Oh, this is slightly frustrating. It's not the end of the world because you just have so much pop cap at your disposal and so many TCs. But it's still an annoying little detail, right? It's still good trades for a few straggler Palace Guard, and it distracts your main force as well. And even more. These guys have no retreat point either. So Palace Guard chase him down. Still really feels like a big mistake coming out to not have gone for the Yuan Dynasty, which we've apparently returned to the Tang Dynasty, which is a lie. Ignore that again, folks. Apologies for that. But yeah, he's not up at Yuan Dynasty yet, which is quite disappointing to see. Really missed opportunity. Isn't using the Spirit Away either, so not getting any value there. He's at least keeping the space free so he can build stables later if he wants to go into Fire Lances. Meanwhile, Keep will finally go down, and Crossbowman should be able to snipe out a few Villies here on the retreat. And look at the move in. The Palace Guard, they go straight on top of the siege weapons. Agonal's being sniped out quick, but look at the damage out from these archers. The Palace Guard actually getting shredded pretty quick. But they definitely got their value. The amount of siege weapons they snipe, this is fine for sure. You're actually happy with this. You'd be even happy if you can get the final Mangonel, but it looks like it's going to live long enough. Meanwhile, the anarchy continues. How many villages has he sniped now? It's a decent amount, right? Like, Bald was up at about 130 eco, now down to 118. So you've got decent value, and now look at the nest of bees! Bald is not managing his economy well. The amount of missed micros here. Oi, 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 and he's not moving the villies off here either. It's like the 4th of bloody July here. The show is in full celebration mode with the 6 Nester Bees. These Nester Bees that will completely annihilate your Archer lines, which is your counter right now to the crossbow spam, right? And then it becomes a slog between Man-at-Arms and Palace Guard. And the difference maker genuinely will be these Nester Bees. These Nester Bees still waiting on that extra range. He needs to get Pyrotechnics. Pyrotechnics is just such a big deal here. And there it is. Starts to research it. So remember, this does affect the Nester Bees. They're going to get an extra 20% range to their 8, which is going to put them up at 9.6 range. Bombards, in the meantime, are going to go up to 12 range. I'll remind you, folks, that's the range of a Springald. So you'll be able to snipe out the Springalds when they're trying to attack you. Difference is, your health pool is, what, 3 times the size? Closer to 4. And oh, look at this keep drop. What? How did Bald sneak this one in? I don't think it's going to matter, though. The Bombers are just going to turn around and siege you down. A nice idea by Bald to try and catch them Treaklers, but ultimately just a waste of 800 stone again. The keep on the other side isn't too bad, but once again, just no protection for this. It will be sieged in the end. I don't know if I like this play. Actually, I know that I don't. I'm 100% certain I don't, because there's no sway behind it, right? There's no deeper sense of value. If you're talking about vision, just stick a small little outpost down here. You get the same effect, right? If you're talking about choking an area, you have to put a military force behind it. You know, it's not like this was going to be used for a military expansion either. You knew he had keeps over here, so that would have been not very feasible. And there's not really enough room here for a military district, and he hasn't left villages around. So Bald just seemingly wasting stone for no apparent reason other than to brag to his opponent that he has more stone than him. Definitely feels that way when you see this many keeps going down still. And also the walls. This is interesting, actually. So he's trying to create a second layer, right? Just think of anyone's played Stronghold has had this, right? You got your primary castle area, and then you got like your forward lower area where you probably have a bunch of your production buildings. That's kind of what he's doing here, right? So he's going from having less than a quarter of the map to looking to have over a third. And well, I don't think the show is going to allow him to have that for free. Bombard sniping out units again. Always too slow to respond for Bald. And he does go for the Culverin. Remember that the Culverin's matched on the range by the Bombards. This is not going to be a great trade for him. Just because of how much more tanky you are than Culverins. Here we go, Bombards starting to snipe. Targets them out. Might lose a Bombard though, whoopsie days. He needs to target the Culverins, and he's not doing that. So back away. Remember, the Culverins do move incredibly slow, 0.75 compared to the 1 movement speed of the Bombards. Does give you the edge. And Nester Bees just forcing him back. Let's look at the damage. That's the worst feeling, by the way. Whenever you're going to retreat as Bald from this, keep in mind that the way formations work by default with multiple units selected is it puts the melee on the front. So when you turn around to retreat, what's actually happening is you're exposing your swishy ranged units first, and it means that Nester Bees is hitting the most crucial and easy to kill target in the formation. So quickly. These Bombards, this attack speed is insane. 3.68 seconds for each attack. For comparison, Mangonel takes 5.75. This really is the power of China, folks. There's just so many layers to this, right? We always talk about how Ming Dynasty is so important. It's something that's actually been neglected and ignored this entire time by Xiao. And it hasn't mattered, right? Because he just got so much power out of the siege, courtesy of all these researchers and how bulky the clock tower units are. Now he's just pop capped at a situation where he wants to lose a few units so he can actually push out more. And Maganao is now being built up by Bald. You notice Bald has a lot more pop cap into the military front. And he can kind of afford it logically just because there's not much eco value left in his base, right? He's picking dry quicker than Xiao is right now. But the problem he has is like Xiao to me has a more qualitative solution. His army makes more sense and does more. The only thing that's really convincing me that the Ball's kind of holding on here are these Culverins. I do like the Culverin plays. I just don't think it works against China because of that range, right? You have to think of the value he's getting out of Bombards. It's almost comparative to trying to like counter out Rus Springalds with Springalds, right? Where Rus in the Imperial Age with the High Armory go up to 13.5 tower range on the Springalds. Well, the comparison here is these Bombards are up to 12 tower range, and that's exactly what the Culverin is. The difference is that they have double the health of the Culverin. So while the Culverin does do an additional 200 damage to siege, bringing up to the 300 mark, the Bombards by default do 200. So you can see how that trade actually can easily end up favoring the Chinese player here with his tanky Bombards. And forward infrastructure. This is what I want to see a bit sooner out of Bald. And it explains further the sense of all these wallings. He's just trying to protect this area to not only strip it bare of all resources, but also give himself a foothold with which to push out new units quicker. Because he understands that when he engages, he's going to lose a lot of units to Nesta Bees with the initial fire. It's very hard to dodge that problem. But the difference is that right now, Xiao hasn't pushed up for a forward military base. Until now. And here they come. And China, the cool thing, they build it so fast, right? All these racks are here. So he's ready to replace the Palace Guard as quickly as he loses them. He just needs to do the same thing with the archers as well. On this back and forth game of just trying to decap sacred sites. And so much surplus. I do think that both these players are overly reluctant to a negative degree. And I think the reasoning behind it, which, by the way, if you want to know if they're being, like, you know, over-defensive and not actually doing enough, it's the fact that they have ginormous surplus and aren't doing anything right now. But there's actually a logical reason behind it. And it's the limiting factor on both sides, which is a siege weapon. And we'll pause that fort, because small engagement. Good damage done to Bald's forces, actually. So the limiting factor is this, folks. For Bald, it's getting Culverins out, right? Culverins can be slow to produce. He hasn't got that many siege workshops. It takes some time to push them out. Meanwhile, for his opponent, it's these Bombards that he wants to be tanky, so they have to come out the clock tower. And now push in, Palace Guard engaging. And look how quickly he closes the gap. And now the Nesta Bees, the spread damage, the crossbows as well. Bald is losing his force too quick here. The Palace Guard, they might be minced here, but they've served their purpose. They've created the space, allowing the Nesta Bees to get value. And the Bombards, in the meantime, sniping through the Culverins quicker than the Culverins can snipe back. These Culverins, inferior attack speed, but enough to get through the Bombards in the end. Due to the Springles and more Culverins coming in. So a little bit missed micro there, I think, out of Xiao. Doesn't actually manage to focus out the Culverins first, clicks on the wrong targets, and it means that Bald has the edge now. And this keep is going to be a fail. And with the Mangonels and the Culverins here, even though there's no military force in melee, right, like infantry units or whatever, now Bald can push you back. Question is, who's going to reproduce their army quicker? Bald, 54. Xiao already up at 84. Pushing out from all of these buildings at the back, as well as his production line on the front. And the Bombards are being replaced, remember. He has an Imperial official watching over this. So these Clock Tower Bombards, 15 seconds to produce. And that's where he can potentially have the edge. If they both have excessive surplus resource, right? Like they do here, 15,000 food, for example. The difference maker is going to be that these Culverins take a very long time to come out. 45 seconds for each one, compared to the 15 seconds to the Bombards that are actually matching up very well against them. I think research-wise, is anyone behind the uni at this stage? Surely not. I think they should... Yeah, they've got everything they needed. I love how cavalry was researched by Bald, despite the fact he has no cavalry. Oh. Those type of stressful plays are the ones that make you Bald, folks. So Bombard's moving in range, being sniped out again though. Palace Guard can close the gap. They need to be quick about it so the Mangonels are getting value. And that's the thing, he's focusing on the Mangonels, and that's why he keeps getting sniped out on the Bombards. And Xiao spreads out onto the Villi line. Prevented by the man-at-arms from gap closing onto the siege weapons. Crossbows move in range to get through the man-at-arms, but there's barely any Palace Guard left here. Once again, Xiao will fail to breach. And once again, he will lose his siege army. Big mistakes being made here. Misplay after misplay. And this is the other wonky part. You just saw it there, right? Is if you allow this game to keep turning to slog, and if Bull starts to crawl in keeps, he's going to get value out of the medical centers now, right? And this is where I genuinely think you need to switch into Ming Dynasty. The fact that you still haven't is hurting my brain and hurting your game. Ming Dynasty is such a big deal here, folks. He has surplus resources, and he continues to ignore it. And I just do not for the life of me understand why. You don't need villager production time anymore. It's almost like he's forgotten this is a thing. Genuinely, Yuan does, even Ming Dynasty I'd be okay with. Something, though. Anything is better than Song Dynasty at this stage in the game. Push in. Switchover has been taken into Camel Archers now by Balls. Palace Guard have been replaced. No, well, only one Mangonel. No, this is not looking as good anymore for Ball. Ball needs more Mangonels. He needs them now. Remember, because he switched over into the Camel Archers, he can't build out in the field anymore, which is why he has barely any Mangonels now. And now the push in with the Palace Guard. Culverin's trying to retreat. If you reach them, you're going to lose them quick. They're too slow to move away. And in come the Mollies. Burning them down. One's gone already. Trying to block him in. Even the villagers trying to get in the way to stop the pursuit of the valuable siege weapons. They'll slow it down somewhat. Camel Archers are kind of holding their own, but the crossbows getting in range as well. And that means that this force is going to be wiped. And so the question is whether we'll have enough units to run down all these siege weapons afterwards. And moving in, trying to burn them down. He's going to get for a Springald at least. Misses the opportunity to snipe the Culverin that had less health at that situation. And it looks like his Palace Guard are being cleaned up. He is replacing them fairly fast. And he's matching the pace, but now the switch up comes out. It's into the Lancers. But remember, the Lancers are already counted out by the Crossbowmen. So maybe not the best choice coming out from Bald here, because your opponent is still sustaining this front line. And all the while, look what's happening on the side. The Bombard's getting through the keeps. So no more healing for you. No more healing shenanigans out of the forts. The backup now by the crossbows. And a push out coming in from Bald. Into the keep range of Xiao. And that should force his opponent away. We'll sacrifice the Lancers for the retreat to be successful. But once again, small takes on both sides. You siege a keep, you snipe a few villagers, but not able to take out that valuable military infrastructure on the front. And that's the interesting part about this, right, is that Bald hasn't really been replacing his units from the front, per se, because all of these buildings are stables, apart from the 3 racks back here. So a lot of the time, his man-at-arms treacle has been from back in his base. And I think that's where the mistake has been made here. He needs to get more infrastructure up. He has got the archery ranges over here, which are proving somewhat effective with the Camel Archers. But really, I would just love to see a bunch of forward Raxes, because I don't really see the full value of Camel Archers, considering that your opponent still doesn't have any horses, so you're not reducing any of his damage. Push in again. So this time, look, the siege, the building's going to be forced to engage, though. Doesn't have any Nesta Bees anymore. Only Bombards, and those Bombards are going to be sniped out quickly here. He has to back them up. Trying to stay out of range, but the Culverins are getting close enough to snipe down Bombards. And a small group of Palace Guard are getting through the infrastructure on the side, trying to stop the production of these Lancers. And the wraparound of a few units are keeping the artillery units on their toes. The main fight is definitely going the way of Xiao again. But remember, just listen to the noise of it. It just chings constantly as all these units get replaced on both sides. Popcat constantly being reached, but this time, look at the difference now. Xiao, always up at 200. Bald, falling quick. Down to 40 military units. He did not build the same level of infrastructure and is suffering the price for it. Small army to try and hold back his opponent. Nice use of the Mangonels. This is what he needed. He gets rid of a lot of the crossbows. But there's still enough here to cause some anarchy. Splits them into 3 different small groups. And with hand cannoneers now coming in, Bald is forfeiting a lot of ground. Well, Mangonel sniped. And what a difference this has made, folks. The forward bases really are paying off for Xiao. Bald, big mistake with this cavalry division, right? This area of his base simply and solely dedicated to pushing out Lancers, a unit that has no purpose against this composition the Chinese have been pushing out. And it means you're going to lose all the forward base. He has at least retreated over to the west, where he's just harvesting more of these resources. But losing central control at this stage could actually be pretty crucial. It's going to start to pin you in. And at that stage, you might not have the ability to flank around on the sides. And look at the surplus difference. although you still have a big bulk behind you, you're still replacing units. Xiao is at this number because he's constantly pushing out replacements. He's almost always at 200 pop cap. And now Spearman as well. Wow, we have reached Zerg Factor 5, haven't we? So he wants to keep up the quality range units and just engage a melee line to slow down his opponent. He needs to be careful because he has been pushing the limit and he is draining up his resources now, right? And remember, the Palace Guard are a lot more effective than the Spears. They move faster, they have more health, they're more tanky, they do more damage. But the Spearmen are at least finding some value because of the fact that Bull continues to build in Spearmen. And finally, crossbows. Yes, this is what I wanted more of. Took 40 minutes, but we're finally there. Bald has read the memo. He understands the need in this game. And they will be cost-effective trades, especially considering that one of the big things to highlight here is that due to all the culverins just being overwhelming at the stage, Xiao hasn't built a single nest of bees in what feels like 10 minutes. And now the trades come out. Bombards on culverins, and those culverins are tanky enough to require 3 shots each time. Trade isn't too bad in the end, though. Bit of a misplay there, actually moving on to a different use of the culverin, but 2 for free trade. And if you can push your opponent up onto the high ground, it's kind of worth it even if you trade more bombards for culverins, right? Just because your opponent is going to run out of things to mine. The main army gone. So, I'm noticing a little bit of coughing and spluttering here as he's slowed down the rate at which he's started pushing out these units. But keep in mind that long-term, he can actually surpass his opponent, right? The Villi count is in his favor by 20. Bald is in a situation where, for the moment, he has that surplus. But think about this, guys. Several minutes ago, this was 15,000 food surplus. It's now down to 3,000. And Xiao is starting to stabilize again, which means if this continues non-stop for another 10 minutes, Xiao will actually start to just choke out control of this game from Bald. Question is whether we can keep that pressure up. Dropping forward keeps. Really needs to solve the issue of the crossbowmen now. The Palace Guard alone are not going to be good enough. This is where it'd be a great time to switch into Ming Dynasty, but no signs being shown of doing exactly that still. And I'm sure there are some Chinese nerds that spam 24/7 right now that are becoming exactly like Xiao's head, right? They're just molding from this experience. Because it's kind of weird that we are 42 minutes in the game and the Chinese player is still on the Song Dynasty. And it's not like he's disposing his villages in a weird way, right? It's not like Xiao is running these villies constantly forward to run down and build keeps, right? He's only doing this one to cover the gold vein expansion. So he's being very responsible and very frugal about the way he uses his villages. He's never risking them for a foothold in a new area, right? It's always the army first. And that's why it doesn't make much sense to me why he's stuck on Song Dynasty still. And I am aware it bugs out sometimes, which is why I keep doing this. I keep going back and checking. And yeah, there's just nothing to suggest he's gone up on the landmarks. A calming moment, but not for long. Bald's moving in. He thinks his opponent's weak, but look at the bombard count! 10 bombards now! Some of them normie, some of them clock tower. He didn't want to wait for the slow production rate, and this is where you have to retreat if you're Bald. Because you'll be beaten on the siege. You might lose the culverins. The bombards are quicker, but he lets up. And Bald should be counting his lucky stripes right now. He could have lost the whole siege division there. Holy crap. You blink, look away for a second, and this is what you come back to. Xiao. Cannoneers, Palace Guard, and Bombards is actually the perfect solution to what his opponent is doing right now. He does have to be careful not to overdo it with the Palace Guard, though, because of how many Mangonels are here. And remember, the reason he keeps losing Bombards in each of those engagements before is because he's prioritizing the Mangonels at the beginning of the fights. With this number, he might be able to do it and get away with it. And now, look what he's going to find. Not quick enough, though. If Xiao kept running, he would have found a huge village pocket, and there wouldn't have been enough room to protect all these. If you hit this economy pocket and snipe out half of it, and take that away from Bald, I think you make this game almost impossible for him to play. Because he won't be able to just build surplus still, right? He'll run out of resources quickly. Because right now, if you look at it, Xiao has half of the map, right? And it's a safe half. There's no contest here. This area is going to come under contest soon. The risk for Sio and why he doesn't rush to do it, though, is it means he's moving away from the center and he could get flanked. Now trying to drop more keeps. Needs to think twice about this one, though. Won't begin the construction, doesn't want to give away that it's planned, right? So it gets sieged down instantly. So he'll make his opponent back away first, and they'll build it. And remember, trying to build these quick. This is how you keep Crawl, by the way. So he's slowly pushing into where these eco lines are, and it's going to force an uncomfortable commitment out of Bald. And there it is, moving in. Pass guard, preventing him from reaching the villages, and the snipe out's going to begin. Culveron's being targeted, Bombard, still healthy count for Sio, and only 3 anti-siege for Bald. It looks like he's going to lose this round. However, the push pass, straight on top of them with the melee units. They ignore the pass guard and move past them. The Bombards have to retreat. He'll get most of them away, though. And the keep was prevented from going up. Sitting about 70%, but not complete. Pass guard continue to trickle out in the meantime for Sio. Sio not replacing them quick enough anymore. This is the risky balance, right? When you invest this much into a Bombard count, it means you don't necessarily have the same count on the front line. And that's what happens here. You just get overwhelmed, swarmed, and Bald runs straight past you. Takes out the squishy targets, right? The Bombard cannons. These Bombards, unless he micros them perfectly, they're not being efficient here. It makes you wonder, 2 Nesta Bees, would it have been worth it more? And I think the answer is yes, most definitely. These Bombards greedily getting in range are going to be punished. Have to back off for the moment. But you see the paranoia, right? Bald is playing a fairly blind game. He doesn't know if his opponent is coming. I love this sneak, though, to take the gold vein closer to Sio's base right now. To strip that extra piece of cheddar from him. Because you know this game is heading towards a point where the gold is going to be the thing to dry up, right? That's going to be the thing that matters. And I love the way that Sio's prepped for this, right? Palace Guard don't cost much on the gold front. It's 200. He has 7k surplus gold right now. Food is his limiting factor. And it means he's in a situation where he can afford to lose his siege weapons more regularly than his opponent. Once again, a moment of calm sets in before the storm, as both sides rebuild their forces. And I do think that Sio needs a new military district. I just don't think he's going to do it because of wood being a limiting factor now. There's not that much wood left on the map, right? So he doesn't want to waste a few thousand building a new military district. But it doesn't mean that he's pushing in new troops slower than he'd like. But this is the power that Palace Guard give you, right? That confidence. You're seeing the way he moves in and forces uncomfortable situations. And every time Bald moves away, a few of these units get sniped out by these Bombards. And oh, look what he spotted. Well, he looks away from the front now. He says, thank you very much for exposing your economy. And that is a lot of villagers far out and away from safety. He's going to retreat them away now. And he's going to engage on the north front. That was the risk of this move, and it means you have to turn around and deal with it. Palace Guard charging in. 1 Mangonel here, so it won't be quick to wipe out these Palace Guard. The Palace Guard are closing rank quickly on the crossbowmen. We'll force him away once more. Once again, just capped. But he did stop him from getting through this gold, right? He was only halfway through it, so that's a big loss right now for Bald. And Bald might try to sneak back onto this when he's not looking. Which is why Sio is going to send half the Bombards through to get rid of anything else lingering around here. Pretty smart move. Palace Guard. Still not very effective. I feel like a broken record. I don't want to say it again, but maybe this unit right here would have been a better solution at this stage. Just saying. I mean, I'm not a top 500 player, so maybe I shouldn't criticize, but he's definitely been missing a few tricks here. It is slowly winning him the game doing this Palace Guard spam, yes, but I definitely think he could have been winning quicker. Oh, and look at the use of the villages. He's had enough of this crap. And this is an effective trade, remember. Villagers burn through Bombards fairly quick, and they only cost a pitiful 25 food each for the opposite player. And there's not enough troops here to burn through him, and it means that now he can move in onto the keep. And his villagers, although they are going to be expended, will keep the Bombards busy long enough that he can gap close. And there's the move. Straight in. Getting in range. Man-at-arms almost close enough. That's half the Bombard fleet just gone like that due to the villagers. But it looks like the Palace Guard have regrouped. And that's a heavy dent into the economy. Look at Bald down to 69. The perfect number for some situations, but not when you're up against Sio here on Tilton Dale. He's going to be soon across for that gold vein as well. And just a few Palace Guard will keep you at bay, right? You can see that. And once he's picked this dry, which with only 1,000 left, he will move across for an extra juicy 4,000. And it's just, honest to God, I don't know if Sho thinks he gains interest on this at the stage. 13,000 gold. He isn't spending it. And people might be like, well, why is he focusing so many people into gathering gold? Because he understands that Bald needs it more than he does. It's simple scorched earth policy, right? Deny it, even if you don't want it. And I'm gonna say that in the next 10 minutes, if this continues that long, I do expect Bald to be forced to start going, and yeah, he already is, start going archers. Because you just can't afford to keep pushing crossbows, right? They're 40 gold each. And your income is about to sink into nothingness. Did he even pick up any relics in the end? I don't think he did. Oh, he got 2. Okay, so he's getting 200 gold per minute. But when you're talking about armies getting wiped, that's not going to replace quick enough. Of course, Sho not only having control of more gold veins, but having also 3 relics banked back in his base. And here come the skirmishes again. Always just like 5, 6 man. Palace Guard maxed. Reasoning being is that you want to force a reaction, or over time you're going to snipe out 5, 10 villagers. And if your opponent runs his military army over here to protect, you're going to lose something elsewhere, right? That's the idea of the way that Sho keeps splitting his forces. And here it is. Look, he pushes in. He has to, right? There's just so much economy that's going to be lost here otherwise. And look at his positioning right now. He could actually wrap around and pinch you from behind, and you'd be uncomfortably out of position if he did so. Bombards being engaged. Engaging as well. Culverin sniping out bombards. Sho mismanaging this. Should have been going for the Culverin line. There's 5 Culverins here now. And so many of these Mangonels. And it's going to keep him back. At least for the moment. But look at this. The desperation. Bald everything onto the gold vein. And it's going to be a massacre. The race is on. Villagers on both sides. But only one kind dying. And that's the ones that are painted red. Not only with their robe color, but also with their blood. And the Palace Guard are holding strong here right now. They are rinsing through the crossbows and the archers. The siege weapons are at least gone, so Sho has that weakness in his formation now. But a large chunk of the army also sunk from Bald's side. More important, the eco count. Bald now down to 41 villagers, 104 for Sho. Even if he loses these villagers, it doesn't matter. He still has a huge lead, and it's more about just denying a lot of this gold away still. Now only 2,000 left in this gold vein. And what a slog this game is becoming. You know, we usually are used to seeing this on Boulder Bay, to an extent on Confluence. But the degree to which Hill and Dale is being picked dry of resources, at this rate there won't even be a tree left on the map. We're genuinely arriving at a stage where people are going to start moving for the stealth forest, and that's going to be an optimal play to gather trees. The only thing actually is going to be left is probably boars. Everyone doesn't like boars, apparently, but everything else is fair game, except the game itself. And look at this move. Because you moved out of position, because you're so slow, because you have all these siege weapons, and he has Palace Guard, Sho goes straight into your base. Looking to snipe out the trickling of new troops and any economy you have lingering around here. Not to mention the infrastructure he could snipe down. And this front line will not hold back the Palace Guard for long, so he'll be able to reach those crossbowmen quickly. And you can see the Zerg factor. And he's returning, but the keep's in his way. And now the reinforcements coming in because Sho did set up a new Rax line. Closer to the front, where he can quickly reinforce these fights and outnumber his opponent. And this Treaklin is not going to be there for Bald anymore. So he has to make this army count, and it means it's going to be very hard for them to defend the siege weapons. Especially with the Palace Guard running in. Nice damage coming out. The splash from the Mangonels just in time before they close rank. The snipes are coming in from the bombards. And he has his flank exposed. And still, hand cannoneers and Palace Guard behind him, keeping the reinforcements from reaching the main line. The 67th day of the siege. We were promised relief on the 30th, but it's still not there for the main battalion of Bald. Slowly but surely, this number is sinking down. Bald now to 78 military units. Yes, Sho has drained himself again down to 20. But he has surplus, baby. So much gold in reserve. Just needs to be careful not to waste it now. He's taking a villager hit as well. You can see the number is sinking for him down to 86 now with 9 idle. But still better scaling than his opponent. And nobody really going for this wood line. An interesting factor to consider is that it's been neglected for the entire time. And I'm wondering why. Yeah, this is the weird part. So, because all of his economy is up here, he is getting those straggler trees we talked about. But now he's about to have a weak point in his economy. Look at his resources right now as he replaces the siege weapons. He's going to have to move all of these villages somewhere else. So if you look at his income per minute being up at 800 wood, that's going to sink to 0. And that could be a problem. And that's why he puts a keep down here. He wants more straggler trees over in this area. The keep is not going to be complete. The Mangonel snipes out the villagers again. No chance. And so close to completion, but will fail at the most pivotal moment. And so this army's been wiped again. Bald. He's starting to get the advantage here, doubling him up on the military count for the first time in probably 20 minutes now. And these bombards, very valuable, can't afford to be lost. You see how different the game is now, right? No 10 bombards, no 20 Mangonels, no 1,500 culverins, right? This is hard times. Recessions have hit in the Abbasid dynasty and the Chinese dynasty. We can't afford it anymore, Papa. Best I can give you is some socks for Christmas. Question is, who's going to be left with a lump of coal? Because it's more or less all that's left on the map. As the last of the gold will be ticked dry by Bald first. And now if you lose the villages, it's not the end of the world. You would like to be able to get your hands on wood still. But you got the gold, right? You at least keep them competitive with that. There's still plenty of wood around here for you. And you haven't been spotted out on all those fronts. Still has a few straggler trees, so don't worry, guys. If he has to be forced back onto the high ground, he's still got something. Not much, mind you. And keep will be complete in the end. Sneaks in more villages. And we'll back away just in time. Balling oil to scare away his opponent. Mangonels to siege this down. And the damage to the villagers. He needs to be garrisoning them between the shots, and he's not doing that. And that means he's losing them. The buff Mangonel spread is just too good. And you see it there, losing half the villagers. Xiao now down to 81. And Bald's starting to recover up to the 62 mark. But he's being drained again. A bombard or two is going to be sniped out, but the Palace Guard are here to wipe out the villages afterwards. And with the keep set on fire, he'll have to commit to defending it. And what a marathon of a game this has become. But we must be approaching the final cusp, right? The final moments. There's not really much left on the map. I could maybe see a big fight over this tree line. But genuinely, food and gold was the most critical detail for both of them. It does mean that, to an extent, Bald can rebuild his siege army, but his problem is gold. That's why I expect Xiao to contest him on this, though, is if you look, wood is the limiting factor for Xiao. If he actually had additional wood surplus, he would be pushing out bombards non-stop, right? And the bombards he has, looking towards the base. Going to force his opponent back again. Because he got close with his keep, he feels a bit protected. Needs to be careful, though. These bombards are exposed. Shots coming in. Mangonels are very slow to snipe them down, though. And he's only got one bombard of his own. That's being chased by the Palace Guard in the meantime. The culverin rolling over. It takes so long to arrive, though. And so many Mangonels have already been lost. The Palace Guard looking to chase in. Remember, the crossbows do counter them out still. But considering how small the force was from Xiao, he's finding maximum value out of it. As he gets the bombard. Probably will get the culverin as well. Oof, yep. I think he just about gets it here. Oh no, it's so close. Billy trying to keep it up, but it's futile. Bombard finishes it off. And that means that they are drain drive siege weapons right now. But we talked about how easy it is for one of these players to replace it, right? And you can already see more bombards being produced. Straggler trees being taken. But no commitment out onto this tree line at all. If you're wondering why Xiao isn't going for that tree line at this stage in the game, it's actually due to the limitations of his economy. He's pushing out so many military units that cost a lot of food, 100 food at a time for each of these Palace Guard, that right now he's not really building a surplus. You can see it there, right? He's barely above 0 when you consider what his opponent has in the banks. And that means that he doesn't feel comfortable sending out 20 villagers and potentially losing them to a raid because he doesn't actually have the surplus to, 1, rebuild that villager line, and 2, keep the push out of Palace Guards going. The Palace Guards, the value they're finding elsewhere in this equation is they're making his opponent invest in even more villagers, but he realizes what's happening down here now. It becomes a question of whether he wants to directly contest it. Because right now, it is keeping your opponent in the game. My thoughts is that I don't expect Xiao to go and assault it directly, because although draining that resource supply would be great and taking that away from your opponent is amazing, right now he's got a foothold right outside Bull's base, and he doesn't want to forfeit when stone is becoming a limiting factor, as there is no stone deposits left on the map outside of this one in Xiao's base, which has somehow survived all of this time, having not been picked at all. Now we've clocked that hour mark. Not many games we've been seeing going up to this point, right? And there's definitely arguments that this could have ended a lot sooner from Xiao, but you can see from the scores, Xiao has slowly been cruising towards it. It has truly been death by a million cuts. And although a lot of those cuts may have looked deep enough to just make you drain for the blood, somehow Bald has always been finding medical aid just in time. With the replenished armies, with the new eco lines. But these eco lines are hard to reach now, and you can see that Xiao is wise to it, right? He positions himself such that he will snipe out every villager running through here. And Bald, he needs all this wood to trade more than anything else, right? It's a it's a combination actually of trade and just having enough of the siege weapons. And this time, look at what he has to resort to. Scouts now to try and deal with his opponent. This does mean he has a unit that can quickly rush in and get rid of the bombards, potentially. But at this stage in the game, to have to resort to scouts, it's not a good sign. Usually, at this stage in the game, the thing people go for is the horsemen. Horsemen, of course, did get nerfed. But considering you're up against hand cannoneers, horsemen would have been an amazing investment. Yes, you can get somewhat shredded, but if you gap close, you get the bonus damage against them. Whereas with scouts, you're still going to be shredded by the gunpowder units, right? These gunpowder units that are more like Gatling guns, it feels like. Well, I say that. It's not really the attack speed, it's more about the damage. So let's say they're more like a bazooka. Bombards. The true bazookas moving in to try and siege down the keep. And this is going to work out against Bald in a second. He knows he has to get rid of the bombards, and he's wrapping around the back right now. He's going to force the split engagement coming out of Xiao. But he holds back the villagers, snipes a lot of them down. The scouts charge through into the bombard line. Meanwhile, the bombards holding their ground for the moment, trying to snipe out whatever mangonels they do see. The hand cannon is being overwhelmed in the meantime by the spearmen. But the Pasgard, they've cleaned up the villagers. They can turn around now. They're almost through them. And once they're through them, they're going to chase forward onto this crossbow and archer line. It's just a question of whether there's enough crossbowmen here to get through the Pasgard line. And considering how long these spears are lasting, it might be good enough. Xiao down to 30 of these Pasgard, but almost through with the front line. And after that, you've got to question who can replace their army quicker, because that could be the difference maker here. And it looks like Xiao's going to be one to lose out. Bald holding his own. His spearmen still standing after all of this time somehow. And it will be good enough, so he has the military count now. But Xiao, look how quickly he replaces it. He still has 60 military units in the field. And Bald is up to 90 in the meantime. But it's mainly just scouts again. And this time, it's a lot more hand cannoneers and even more Pasgard. And one or two bombards just to ensure that the mangonels that can be built on the field are going to be worthless. Hand cannoneers trying to snipe through the targets. Pasgard trying to wrap round, get on top of the archers and the crossbowmen, and they will engage, forcing them back. He cancels the mangonel and has to back away. Treacle does continue in. And Bald in full retreat now. He can't really turn around. Not often, anyway. And look at this. It's buying time. The scouts getting in position, trying to wrap onto the bombards again. The bombards are exposed. Hand cannoneers trying to move across to cover this. Xiao still trying to replace his units quick enough. The scouts are a problem, though. Hand cannoneers, he needs to micro them onto different targets. He needs to target 4 onto each scout individually. And as that happens, look at the retreat and the re-engage coming out from Bald on the left flank. So bombards once again gone. And you have to question, why has this been the case for so long? Why has there not been any Nesta Beast still out of Xiao? And it's a good question that has now been answered. They were delayed, stuck in customs, but they'll finally be coming out. And the Nest of Bees, this is where it gets scary. Bull does not have a solution for this. He just needs to get on top of the scouts, but there's barely any scouts left because he lost so many of them to the hand cannoneers initially. And remember, they're unarmored against the Nest of Bees themselves. So this long-range one will scud them down pretty quick. And meanwhile, look at the splash damage, heavily damaged onto his main archer line. Now down to 30. And he won't be able to rebuild this quick enough. He needs to retreat. Staggered formation. And that will calm it for a moment. But now he has big concerns here. Bald, if anything, needs some spring. He needs to deal with these Nest of Bees. This switch over caught him off guard. And why wouldn't you be caught off guard, right? Xiao for so long has been pushing out bombards non-stop in a very stubborn fashion. That you would have expected that for the rest of the game until the very end. Nest of Bees haven't been seen in this game since around the 25-minute mark. But now that they make their return, it's going to be a decisive one, and it needs to be answered. And there's the move, straight into the wood line. Now remember, after all this, look at the gold situation. Xiao, he drained himself dry from wasting so much on pointless bombards. But now, with a composition force of a few bombards and several Nest of Bees, it's hard to see how Bald is going to hold him back. But he's got to find a way. And he's probably only got one shot to do so. Retreats behind the walls. You know, ironically enough, despite the fact that Bald is playing as the Abbasids, this really is starting to have a Kingdom of Heaven feeling. If the roles were reversed, right? I mean, obviously, China was never in that movie, but Xiao right now is role-playing the Abbasid army quite well. And I have to say, Saladin is looking quite bulky now. 43 spears, 16 palace guards, 16 hand cannoneers, and 5 Nest of Bees. And a push out on the east side from Bald. He's finally punishing this fort economy. Took him long enough, though. I don't think he even realized it was here the whole time. And that's kind of problematic. Because if you snipe this out sooner, think about the repercussions. Xiao probably didn't keep managing to push out this many units regularly, right? Because when you think about the engagements, a lot of them were actually bad for Xiao. He was losing too many units. And in a lot of ways, I still think he did play a suboptimal China here. Never going for the Yuan dynasties feels like a curse and a mistake. But in the end, it just seems to have been inconsequential due to these pocket economies not being spotted, due to the aggression always being elsewhere. And now look at the aggression straight into the military district. And this all is going to be gone in the blink of an eye. And these are still being used to produce units, right? He doesn't have the room in his base. Look how much of it is eaten up by houses and farmland. And oh my god, he's actually resorting to trade. What? Yeah. Wow. So even more importantly, he holds this area, right? Now he needs that for his gold influx. If you wanted, you could do the same as Xiao, and you wouldn't even be under attack at all. But I don't think it's going to reach that stage in the game. I think this is a sizable force. You can take a winning engagement here in the right circumstances. And here he comes again, 25 scouts. These scouts were effective against the bombards, but against splash damage, they could die instantly. It's 5 Nest of Bees. These Nest of Bees, remember, it's 8 burst attacks of 10 damage. Potentially 80 damage if it somehow, all of it hit one unit. And only 132 health on these scouts. So one salvo could end you. And remember, the spearmen here protect very well against the scouts as well. And here we go, in range of the Nest of Bees. Small group of spearmen chased after the scouts. Nest of Bees engage on this range line. The man-at-arms are going to get close enough, but the damage is already being done. And the spread here, even in the staggered formation, Bees do not care. And the burst is effective. And it's even up. Now the hand cannoneers are the edge that will run straight through Bald's belly at this rate. He needs to snipe them out, but he can't reach them anymore. The man-at-arms barely still alive at this stage. Yes, they go for the siege weapons, but they do not have the numbers to follow through. They do not have the conviction or the strength of arms here. The new treacle might even it up, but think about the damage you've done here. Look at the surplus difference right now. Bald is playing on the edge of his seat, and Xiao, he's been saving for a long winter. He instantly replaces the units. Get the last few hand cannoneers away in time. And we'll look to reset, and it is just non-stop pokey action here. Any pokey fans in the chat? Good old spears. And that's all he needs, really. It's not even about the quality of his melee unit anymore. It's simple cannon fodder. 156 health, cost-effective compared to the Pulse Guard, is allowing him to build up a surplus and means that the Nest of Bees buy enough time to add in 1 or 2 more salvos. And that's where your damage comes from. That is your killer unit. Meanwhile, just sending out a few spearmen to cause a little bit of disruption over here to the caravan routes. And they're getting value right now. Remember, the spearmen do additional damage to these units because they are considered cavalry. So it's kind of cool how you can actually send in a small group of spears and you can snipe out a lot of traders at this point in the game. And I think you could afford a few of these spearmen to go over there. I mean, good lord. He even stopped producing hand cannoneers. What's the point? He just needs more melee units. More in the mosh pit that can prevent units from reaching the clock tower Nest of Bees. Forcing more defenses in the meantime to protect that caravan route. If we look at the income, though, you can see how he's barely hanging in there. 200 gold per minute. No wood. That's the other painful detail. Every one of these traders lost is expensive. Although it costs you 50 wood and 50 gold, keep in mind that you don't have any wood income anymore. And more importantly than that, you never went for the trade wing, so you're not getting the additional benefits of doing this at this stage in the game, which would have been a huge value in the late game, but he never thought he'd need it. He never thought we'd be an hour and 10 minutes into this game, and it still not be over. I know. So he's tired of this. He says, I ain't coming to you anymore. Sacred sites are mine. You come out to me, or you lose the game. You're cool, baldy blocks. And I'm wondering what he's really waiting for. What's his... Oh, God. His military cap is disgusting. 71 units. And keeps that he has to get through. So many keeps, by the way. The fact that these have come back into influence in the game 30 minutes later is actually impressive. And that delay is important because look what it forces. It forces the time. The time needed for Xiao to move this static army across and in position to defend on what will probably be the last Urara out of Bulu. As I don't think he has much left past this attack force. Right? If this gets wiped again, he's not replacing it. God, the military district being on the other side does not help this effort either. If anything, he could try and sneak in on the sides, but you can see there are keeps down on each of these, right? And Xiao's able to afford that even more, right? He kept the surplus stone. He didn't even need to go through this final outcropping in his base. And Nest of Bees getting some damage out. I'm hearing Taipan. His bull just reeing right now. Maybe he's trying to reason with Xiao. Xiao, sir, I am your head. Would you truly strike down your head? Xiao's response, I don't need head. Brain inconsequential. Just press buttons and click a lot. That's how you play RTSs. It's like FPSs with just aim lol, but it's just click lol. And look, these balls coming out from Xiao. Anything to slow his opponent down. These spears with the keepers enough to stop him decapping the sacred site. And now I'm starting to wonder if Bull just typed to him, please, Xiao, Daddy Senpai, can you let me decap one for free? And if the guy playing on this account wasn't Bull before, he definitely is Bull now. I can feel for him. I can feel the hair follicles vibrating off of his head at the frustration of Nest of Bees at 1 minute and 13 seconds denying you at every turn. And this wraparound is the signs of a broken man. And a broken army at that. And what a way to win out of Xiao. The patience shown at times. The constant slog back and forth, right? The bombards that counter out the culverins. The slow move across the map. And the pressure on his opponent to get more greedy with his economy. Gives him the edge and gives him the win here. It takes him 1 hour and 13 minutes. But Xiao finally conquers the power of his shiny bald head.